Coming up on this episode of the Roundtable.
The AMC pre-movie reel that has become a sort of cult classic in its own right now, with Nicole Kidman looking remarkably animatronic, I must say. It's not just the facelift, it's the whole package, very Barbie-esque. The moment that really broke me is when she's sort of going through the litany of how wonderful and perfect movies are, and they create this elevated reality that's more real than reality itself. And in this hyper reality, we experience the true meaning of life in a way that we could never do outside of the movie theater. She says, movies take us to a place that we've never been before, and it flashes onto the screen. And what do you see but Jurassic World? You see the car driving into Jurassic World. Yes, a place we've never been before, like Jurassic Park. This is the level of engagement with the teachings of Michael Crichton that Barbieism is on right now. I don't think they're getting the message. And, once again, like, in spite of the fact that dolls never cry, this will end in tears.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Roundtable, your weekly publishers and editors podcast here at The American Mind. I'm your host, Spencer Clavin, features editor of The American Mind and associate editor of the Claremont Review of Books, and I am joined today by managing editor Seth Barron and editor James Poulos. Well, it's the summer blockbuster edition of the Roundtable this week, but before we get into Barbieheimer weekend, we have to first talk about Huntergate. Hunter Barbie? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's Hunter Bidenheimer. There it is. Okay. It's Barbieheimer. It's the network of corruption that is always kind of peeping its head out, approaching the surface, making its way into the news. It seems more and more every day. We have a few different things to talk about because we didn't get to them last week. There are two major cases to be bearing in mind here. One is an investigation by the House Republicans into the Biden family's domestic and international business dealings. This is, the Burisma stuff for the Ukraine and China deals, Biden's denials that he knows anything about his son's business dealings and the increasing evidence to the contrary. And then there is this Justice Department case about tax evasion, $1.5 million. Hunter's accused of receiving $1.5 million in taxable income in both 2017 and 2018, and failing to pay more than $100,000 in taxes each of those years. These are the charges. Here are some developments. In the House investigation, there's been an announcement from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Chuck Grassley released testimony from an FBI informant, a foreign informant, claiming that Burisma, this is the company, the Ukrainian company on which Hunter was a member of the board of directors, paid $5 million, two payments of $5 million to the Bidens. That's from their records, as part of an effort to have prosecutor Victor Shokin removed. At this time, when Biden was vice president, Victor Shokin was investigating. This was a Ukrainian prosecutor investigating Burisma. It seems pretty clear that Biden wanted the guy gone. He's on tape saying that he withheld funds from the Ukrainian president until the prosecutor was removed. He says, if the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. So this $5 million thing, unconfirmed whether Biden received any of it. There's definitely more to come on that. Meanwhile, the plea deal in the tax evasion case that we thought had been reached has now fallen apart. The Trump-appointed Judge Norika has asked the prosecution in that case whether the plea deal that they had worked out would cover certain future charges. They said no, it wouldn't. Then the judge said to Hunter, if if it doesn't cover these charges, is there a deal? Turns out, no, there's no deal. And so now he's back to pleading not guilty. Finally, on Monday, we are expected to receive testimony from Devon Archer, former business partner of Hunter's, testifying to the House Oversight Committee that Hunter used his influence to score deals. There's almost so many different kind of modes of corruption involved here that I hardly know where to begin. I'm interested about this Monday testimony. I read that Archer is in hiding, which is a pretty dramatic way of describing his situation, but it's not totally shocking to me. I guess if he shows up with with like a noose around his neck, he didn't kill himself. That's pretty grim, I realize, as a joke. But I guess I want to start off here. I'd like to talk about these bribes. How plausible do you think these claims are? Will we ever get confirmation of these $5 million bribes? And does it matter? Is this going to lead to some sort of impeachment that will have legs? Is corruption of this, to me, quite staggering degree, simply baked into our system from now on? Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, it sounds like they are going to impeach Biden. I mean, McCarthy made noises about that yesterday, and then today, supposedly, he walked it back. But, look, why wouldn't they? The Democrats are pursuing, multiple jurisdiction criminal trials against Trump. So, why shouldn't the Republicans do the same thing? Impeach Biden and seek to put his son on trial for his various crimes. It seems pretty clear that the bribes are real. I mean, they've tracked the money going into Biden to bank accounts of the various Biden members of the Biden family. You have people on every side of the negotiations saying, "Yeah, this is what happened." I mean, the main question is look at the way the New York Times covers it, which is they just don't cover it. Or they say, oh, the Republicans are putting on a show. The Republicans are chasing, allegations that aren't really very substantial. I mean, it's very easy to, in these bribery cases, when it comes to the new standards of how to convict somebody of a public official of like abusing their office and taking bribes is you really have to very specifically prove that there was a quid pro quo. There'll probably be ways for Joe Biden to slip that trap. Just because Burisma thought they were going to get something from giving my son $10 million. That doesn't mean that, that's actually okay. You can do that, more or less. I think what was really interesting about this business in Delaware, now, I don't know what happened with this, but there were reports that Hunter Biden's lawyers called the judge's office and impersonated the prosecutor to try to get a file that was part of a file of tax information suppressed, and this apparently very much disturbed the judge.
As well, it should have. This was crazy.
That's crazy. I mean, it's beyond something that would get you disbarred. I mean, it would get you jailed if it's true. I think it's very interesting the reaction of the Biden team that the chagrin that Hunter Biden wouldn't get absolute immunity from all future charges, if he pled guilty to these misdemeanors. I mean, in fact, he could face dozens of years in prison. I mean,
well, absolute immunity is the presumption, right? I'm probably chagrined that he doesn't already have that built in somewhere into the law, President's son.
But he, I mean, I'll just end with this. I mean, he was taking off his. One thing I think we're talking about $17 million that he avoided taxes on, I believe, over the course of many years. But he was doing things like writing off his drug dealer's rent as a business expense, and like spend his sex club dues and his daughter's college tuition. I mean, these are just like outright tax fraud. I mean, there are people who go to prison. People on the left keep saying, "Oh, this is nothing," but look at Trump's accountant, that guy Weiselberg or whatever his name is, who went to jail because he, didn't account for certain perks that he received, corporate perks as income. This happens. People go to prison for this stuff. Not to mention the gun, the federal gun form that he lied on. So sorry I went on for so long about
that. No, I mean, this could be, many books could be written about this. And the question is why they haven't been written already. Once upon a time, back in the mists of memory, there was a president who was under heavy investigation and heavy scrutiny. His name, Donald J. Trump. And the objective of those investigating him was clearly to uncover some dirt, some really damning dirt, and punish the man to the fullest extent of the law. They threw the kitchen sink, if not the book, at him. And what did they uncover as far as corruption, bribery, financial malfeasance? What did they uncover? Nothing. They uncovered nothing. And so one wonders. We know that for decades, there has been a massive international money laundering operation. We know that it has flowed through major European banks. We know that London has been the world capital of money laundering for a long time. We know that shenanigans have taken place of the likes that appeared in the Panama Papers. We know, courtesy of famous globetrotters like John le Carré, R.I.P., that the scale of international financial crime and other related international crimes was and continues to be simply massive, touching not only on money laundering, but smuggling and trafficking of all kinds. And indeed, if le Carré is to be believed, and why not, considering he said of his book, The Constant Gardener, that it was really just a sort of mild taste of what really went on. The healthcare, global health industry, not immune or disconnected from all of this stuff. And so you have to ask, okay, well, who is this actually touching? Why is there no news? Why does nobody ever get busted for this stuff? And so you look at Joe Biden and you look at Burisma and you look at what's going on in Ukraine and you go, oh, okay, here's some, there's a little bit, a whiff of smoke in the air. Where's the gun? We know that Ukraine has been used as a nexus of money laundering and international crime. And we know that these things take place at a very high level. And we also know that to a degree, this is inescapable, that if you want to participate or you find yourself stuck at that level, as Hunter Biden basically found himself stuck at that level, your hands are going to be dirty to some degree. You are going to get involved. There's no real way to do business at that level without encountering the underworld. And yet it has been very difficult to pin the tail on the donkey. There was a novel, a nice thick novel, combination doorstop beach read by a guy named Jay Newman, who spent many years at that level. It was called Under Money, came out, I forgot if it was last year or the year before. Same sort of deal where, extremely lurid and over the top fictionalization of what the reader is forced to conclude is not so fictional stuff that Newman encountered or heard about or knew about. And this was his attempt to kind of part the curtains a little bit. And so, I think this is a real elephant in the room. How difficult and how absurd is it to try to understand or characterize what's going on in US politics, as if this nexus of crime and finance and intelligence simply did not exist, which is the portrayal that we get from our mainstream media. And anyone who makes any attempt to sort of probe into this more deeply, well, it's very, very easy to characterize these people as sort of whack jobs and conspiracy theorists. You have no evidence. Clearly, you are an idiot. Clearly, you are making things up. And of course, some of them do. And doubtless, some of them are in there making things up, making outlandish claims because they're being financed to make those kinds of claims to discredit anyone who is trying to poke the bear. I find this all to be terribly troubling. And it may well be that it was only a matter of time before something, before the dam burst in some way, at least a little bit, and that Biden is where the dam is bursting, and that there might not be a better way forward to patch the dam back up again than to ice Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, not to, bump them off or anything, not that, the powers that be are above that sort of thing, but to just, maybe this is kind of, okay, you're done and you can go have fun retiring to wherever it is you retire to. And then just like Lyndon Johnson, he's out of office and then he quickly dies. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the funny thing about Joe Biden is he's so compromised, and he's always been they used to call him the senator from MBNA, right? I mean, Delaware is like the Ukraine of the United States in terms of like corruption, but it's almost like they stuck him in there because he's so compromised, because he won't say no to anything. Like whoever his state masters are, they've got the goods on him, like up and down.
This is like Aristotle says that you're supposed to be independently wealthy if you want to hold high public office, because then you're sort of untouchable. No one can pull the strings on you. And you're saying like, but the opposite is true of Biden. I mean, what's kind of interesting to me about all this is like, whenever you hear people going on about, eat the rich, and like, we're going to stage a communist revolution, and we're going to redistribute all of the wealth that's being held by this tiny, minute percentage of the population. It's like the rich in that phrase, eat the rich, always stands in for some image of like the cowboy hat wearing, oil tycoon out in the McMansion suburbs, as if it's like these evil mustache twirling conservatives. Like, I just got done watching that show Succession, which was totally riveting. But the whole thing is about Rupert Murdoch, and it's all like, this is the power broker behind the scenes. And what's so funny is that when you take, the actual sort of rich muckamucks that live out here, say in Nashville, it's like, yeah, they're hyper wealthy, but the distance between you and them is nothing compared to the distance between even them and like the kind of cash that you can rake in on the daily being a part of these shadow networks that James is talking about. I mean, yeah, set that $17 million figure. I think that's from the congressional hearings. That's the foreign money that they're taking in. I'm sure we're only scratching like a little piece of the surface here. And it's not as if Hunter Biden is the focus, the nexus of all of this. He's really just a bag holder. I mean, he's the guy that sells like fake modernist paintings as a cover for his dad. And it's like, when you take that context and you think about the people that usually get accused when they say eat the rich, it's like they're effectively kulaks. They're like people in the peasant class that are just a little bit more wealthy than the rest of us, and so they're a fitting object of our resentment to stoke further communist uprisings or whatever. It's like, if you're worried about wealth inequality in America, like, surely this is the first problem you would go for. No,
another funny thing about this is Biden going on television and bragging about how he got the Ukrainian prosecutor removed. That's just totally rich. It's totally bizarre. I always thought it was weird. But what's amazing is that the Democrats then impeached Trump for inquiring into that.
Yeah.
They claimed that was a violation, like that was essentially a crime, because Trump asked Zelensky, yeah, what was that about? Everything about this is so rotten. It's all projection. It's like dirty. It's I mean, look, I'm glad. I don't think that they're going to remove Joe Biden from office, but I think if they, as long as they impeach him and go through the whole thing, which they did twice to Trump for no reason, I think that'll be, you know, salutary a little bit.
They absolutely ought to, and like you say, I think they will. What's the over under on they do it and then the left does a like little jujitsu move where they actually vote to have Biden removed from office so then they can get like Gavin Newsom in 2024.
Well, they would have Kamala Harris first.
Yeah, well, and then I'm sure Kamala is like just very easy to do away with. Maybe not. Maybe she's more. Well, I remember back when Kamala was like running, I think in the primaries, and this was not early days of his podcast, but it was long ago in the midst of memory now. And James, I was laughing about Kamala and making fun of her, and James said, "Spencer, is there just something about Kamala that fills you with dread? That makes you feel as if this is exactly the person whose stiletto boot is going to grind into your throat at the end of days." And sure enough, here she is, vice president of the United States, artificial intelligence czar. Like maybe she's the sleeper totalitarian that's going to send us all to the gulags in the end.
Wouldn't she just love that? I mean, I don't. It's the words that come out of her mouth. I mean, we all knew sort of who this person was when she tried to shiv Joe Biden at that long ago primary debate by basically accusing him of being a big fat racist on national television. But the Kamala of that debate is a much more three-dimensional character with far more vitality than the strange malfunctioning creature that we see in dribs and drabs on the news.
Let me ask you something. When she said, okay, Joe Biden voted against busing. And that little girl was like, a little girl getting on the bus. And that little girl was me. So what was the image she was trying to sum it up? Was Joe Biden forcing her onto the bus? Was he dressed like a 1950s Mississippi policeman forcing her onto the bus? Or was he rousting her off the bus? That always seemed like a very confusing image. Like, was it supposed to be? I mean, in what was she saying that busing was great? Because nobody really liked busing at the time.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a transparent effort to grab the mic. I think her message is something like, "I'm Kamala Harris and I'm totes bussin'."
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. Anyway, she's a mess, and it's very you're just like looking at these vids and watching these words come out of her mouth and wondering what is going on inside of that head. I really do not know. It's beyond human understanding, I think. So who's going to, who's the gulag overseer in waiting? It's a very good question, and it seems right that that if Biden were to depart the scene abruptly, there would be something, sort of resembling what's going on the right now, which is a very sloppy scramble for power among various groups of people who have not really convinced a majority or a plurality of the people on their side, whatever that means, that they're the ones who should be anointed. So things are pretty messy right now, and it could well be that they're going to get far, far messier.
Yeah. Bap in his book, this is not the first time that Bap has been quoted on the pod, so I feel I'm safe. But in Bronze Age Mindset, there's some passage about how like the true gynocracy will have come when we are all ruled by like brutish lesbian enforcers, like these hyper masculinized women wielding billy clubs, which not coincidentally, or perhaps coincidentally, is the like muscle in the evil empire that C.S. Lewis depicts in the Space Trilogy. And all of this talk of like, Kamala quietly maneuvering to make her way to the head of the world is like making me think about more than one time when one has asked that book out how long. Okay, once we started talking about Bronze Age pervert and or mindset, we know it's time to move on. And so I'm going to switch this over a little bit, although there's a nice little girl bossy link between what we were just talking about and our next topic, which is not just Barbieheimer, which is the big blockbuster weekend of the summer that just came out, but pop culture generally, and a few different data points, flashpoints for the fight over popular media, artistic depictions of American life, all this, gestures vaguely culture war that's been going on. You may have heard of it for the last several decades. Let's start with Barbie. So if you are not living under a rock, you probably know that this was a very big weekend for movies. Both Greta Gerwig's Barbie and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer came out in one weekend. Barbie took the crown just barely, both very successful movies, but Barbie pulled in 155 million domestic gross in its opening weekend, which is even higher than it was projected. Mattel poured advertising money clearly into this thing, and it paid off. This is higher than the Mario movie, which was I think it held the record for the year before that. And it is not an exaggeration to say that a blitzkrieg of think pieces, a think krieg has been unleashed upon this movie. Basically, everyone thinks everything about it. So far as I can tell, all people have all opinions about Barbie. I am the only person who has no opinion, so I am very eager to hear your opinions about it. I did not watch it. I saw Oppenheimer instead over the weekend. But Barbie is either a nasty feminist screed. Gerwig is kind of known for radicalizing otherwise demure and traditional stories of women in America. The other one that comes to mind is Little Women, which she also did, kind of gave a similar treatment to. So that's one approach. Is this is all about how Barbie has to fight the patriarchy and break out of her beauty standard shackles. Others have discerned the outlines of a crypto-fascist or indeed Straussian traditionalist message beneath the outlines of the screenplay, that there is ultimately a kind of affirmation of the kind of beautiful Barbie aesthetic, the physical health that it would require to, aspire to these archetypal ideals as embodied in Margot Robbie's portrayal of Barbie. And don't even get me started on the online debate about whether Margot Robbie is mid or not. I don't want to get into that, but I do want to talk about the politics of the movie and hear what you guys think. Meanwhile, while all of this flashing light marquee stuff is going on, there have been now a number of ostensibly kind of lower billing properties, but actually it turns out, not all that obscure, conservative coded things that have been doing really well or generating controversy. Jason Aldean's song "Try That in a Small Town" was stirred up a bunch of kind of leftist outrage, because it has the audacity to suggest that you probably shouldn't punch old ladies in the face without cause and rob a Walgreens for no reason. And if you do, and you are in a kind of small, rural, it's implied southern town, you might get some trouble from local law enforcement or even from just the regular folks on the street. See how far you make it down the road if you try that in a small town, is the lyric. Naturally, of course, this is incredibly racist and advocating lynching and all the other sorts of things, because if you are against rioting for some reason, you are against Black people, according to Jason Aldean's critics. The Jason Aldean team did cut out a piece of footage from the BLM riots that was in the video, so they did react in that way. But the song's popularity has only continued to grow. 18 million views, more than 18 million views on YouTube. Number 2 spot on one of the major Billboard charts. Obviously striking a chord, this song, but also, just an object of kind of 2 minutes hate. So interesting that has not managed to destroy its popularity. If anything, it has increased the song's notoriety. In much the same way, Sound of Freedom, which is a movie about child trafficking based on a true story of Tim Ballard, a former U.S. Department for Homeland Security agent who conducts sting operations to rescue a young brother and sister from human trafficking in Colombia, has pulled in $125 million since it debuted. So, those are serious numbers. It's getting good distribution. And it managed even to outgross Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, another movie I haven't seen. But this too is getting painted as like an evil QAnon conspiracy theory movie about how QAnon dads like do evil things, like stop child trafficking and prevent children from being molested. So, really just a lot of people telling on themselves in all of these debates, I would say, but kind of worth stepping back and asking, is something going on in popular media, fictional media, music and TV and movies that bodes well for like normal, sane people? And I want us to get to that question, but first I want to ask if anybody has Barbie takes, because I am actually quite curious to know which of these various Rorschach test responses you guys have had to this movie.
Well, I haven't seen Barbie, but my daughter saw it. She said it was okay. I mean, she said it just seemed kind of like just sort of a banal feminist type of message. I mean, which she isn't really opposed to. She just said it wasn't like that good. What's weird about Barbie now, okay, I haven't seen it, but the whole gestalt of this Barbie movie, it just sounds like, it sounds like something from over like 20 years ago. Like this type of third wave feminism.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's very lean in.
Reclaiming the, all the stereotypes and owning them at the same time that you're, sort of, lean in. But it reminds me of like Legally Blonde, which was from 2001. But it had the same, the same vibe, really. The woman dressed all in pink, with her blonde hair and all of her accessories and the ditziness, but it's all, just a kind of a superpower that she uses with like this incredible, incisive intelligence underneath the appearance of vapidity and, owning the surfaces and all of that. So I don't see this movie as particularly, I mean, aren't we kind of in fourth wave feminism now, which is like that ugly men are the better women?
Well, there is a trans bee. There is a trans Barbie, as I understand.
Fine. But that's just a minor thing from what I gathered.
Right. In past.
Regarding the Sound of Freedom movie, I just think it's really interesting that the left is so outraged about this movie. By the way, I haven't really heard any conservatives being that outraged about Barbie, even though they keep claiming that they are. But the left is really mad about this sex trafficking movie. And it's interesting because they keep claiming that this is dangerous, that this is a QAnon conspiracy thing. But the the left likes to talk about sex trafficking. Like they seem to talk about it a lot, at least in New York. And then it occurred to me, well, they only like sex trafficking insofar as they can get the supposed victims like a visa to stay here. Like, migrants. They say, oh, she was sex trafficked. But they don't ever get into the question.
Right.
Like, what it reminds me of? When E. Jean Carroll first came out with her claims against Trump, she said, I am not going to go to the police about this, because there are so many women down on the border being raped 24 hours a day. And I don't want that. And I don't want to try to overshadow their pain. But then the question is, well, who's doing all this raping? Whatever. You don't really want to get into the question of who's doing it. Anyway, that's sort of my take on those things.
Barbie. I mean, first about Sound of Freedom, like, why are all the names so bad now? Like, people are having to ask if are you on X instead of are you on Twitter? And like, have you seen Sound of Freedom? And it's like, I don't have synesthesia, so no. Like, I don't know.
It's actually called X. James. That's how it's pronounced. Or are you one?
That's like new pronoun just dropped. Barbie, my take will not be that surprising. Literal doll envy. Rainbow Borg people coming out in droves to see and celebrate Barbieism. I think it's time for someone to write the piece about Barbieism and the longing to live the plastic life and to have all the things. And the way to get all the things is for them all to be plastic, and for you yourself to be plastic. None of us is without plastic, according to the tenets of Barbieism. I think that's a powerful force. I think that the longing to become a doll is real. I somehow found myself finally getting around to watching Westworld for the first time. And let me tell you, in the year 2023, it is a lot more brow furrowing than I think it was when it came out. Gosh, how many years ago? At least 4, maybe more than that. When it seemed sort of gimmicky, and now it's not so gimmicky. So I'm sort of like viewing Barbie from afar and watching Westworld, and Michael Crichton, very good at doing the theme park dystopia thing. Westworld being one of his early attempts with the movie back in when Yul Brynner was still alive, before Yul Brynner infamously did his anti-smoking ad that began, "I'm Yul Brynner and I'm dead now." He was very much alive. So Crichton going all the way from the 70s to right through Jurassic Park, doing the theme park dystopia thing. And it strikes me that, Barbieism is a council of living in a theme park in its own right. And one that tries to make the prospect of living in a theme park utopian, not dystopian. But if the teaching of Michael Crichton is that the theme park can never become a utopia, then the partisans of Barbie and of living the life of dolls will really need to reckon with the teachings of Michael Crichton. Although I must say they seem particularly ill-suited to doing so. The AMC pre-movie reel that has become a sort of cult classic in its own right now, with Nicole Kidman looking remarkably animatronic, I must say. It's not just the facelift; it's the whole package, very Barbie-esque.
Oh my gosh, where his stories are perfect and powerful. Is that what you're talking about, James?
Yeah. The moment that really broke me is when she's sort of going through the litany of how wonderful and perfect movies are, and they create this elevated reality that's more real than reality itself. And in this hyper reality, we experience the true meaning of life in a way that we could never do outside of the movie theater. She says, movies take us to a place that we've never been before, and it flashes onto the screen. And what do you see but Jurassic World? You see the car driving into Jurassic World. Yes, a place we've never been before, like Jurassic Park. This is the level of engagement with the teachings of Michael Crichton that Barbieism is on right now. I don't think they're getting the message. And once again, like, in spite of the fact that dolls never cry, this will end in tears.
Okay, so I have a confession to make in this context, which is I do not like the Jason Aldean song. I do not think it is very good. I'm not even a country music hater. I actually really like country music, and I'm not a country music snob either. I like 90s pop country to a degree. However, it is my sad duty to inform you that this is a kind of mid country song. That is not the point. Obviously, my personal snooty opinions about this song don't really matter as much, especially because, okay, so it's a little cringe, it's a little, to me, kind of bland musically, but we're talking about creative context in which, as James has just indicated, the most original and exciting thing we can think of to do is make Indiana Jones 12 the bedpan strikes back, or Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise sort of shuffles his way off of a cliff and onto one of those chairs that carries you up the stairs, and in which Star Trek is making episodes with Stacey Abrams, president of planet Earth. Is Jason Aldean really more cringe than that? No, absolutely not. Like, we have all posted cringe and fallen short of the glory of God. So what's really at stake here is a double standard, right? You get to be cringe if it's in defense of the kind of New World Order, in defense of Barbieism, in defense of the Borg. You do not get to be cringe. In fact, you don't even get to be good if you are defending children from child molestation. And so this kind of raises for me an interesting question, which is like, in each of these cases, the movie about child trafficking, which again, I have not seen, Sound of Freedom, and the song about like not punching grandma in the face, you get these, to me, totally bizarre and over the top reactions from people who are like, well, you can't say don't punch people in the face. That's racist, which is like, okay, but you said that. Like, that's on you, bro. So like, are you saying that just like punching people in the face is sort of like an essential element of Black culture? Like, is that your thesis here? And it reminds me a little bit of when like the right started getting into talking about grooming, like don't groom children. And the left was like, you can't say don't groom children. Like, that's anti-gay. It's like, really? Are like gay people sort of fundamentally attached to grooming children by virtue of their being gay? Like, that does not sound like a liberal talking point. That sounds like a kind of radical right-wing talking point to me. And all of this brings me around to the suspicion that, whereas it used to be the case that liberalism advertised itself as kind of including all of these other people who had formerly been excluded because those other people and other kinds of life and folkways and cultures, they were all actually really kind of great, and don't we like them, and like we can recognize an all-American kind of virtue in the big melting pot, and it's so great to include these other people of other races and other kinds. And now it seems a little bit more like it's precisely because these other races and other people and other genders are not great. It's precisely because they transgress like fundamental moral laws that they must be elevated to the center of our culture, that we can like demonstrate our quote unquote tolerance, by which we mean like our tolerance for pain, like our readiness to just, cross over every line, kick down every fence, beat in every door that is there to sort of hold civilization together. And it's actually not about like, oh, we're so tolerant and loving toward people of different races because can't we all just get along? It's actually like we're using all of these supposedly aggrieved identity groups as props in our campaign to like elevate whatever destroys civilization most quickly and like melts down every tradition and human connection and sort of natural family bond that we can think of. And it's like, okay, so if that's the artistic aesthetic, that is also the political aesthetic of like, call it the left, call it the Borg, call it whatever, like it obviously goes deeper than like Democrat, Republican. If that's their artistic aesthetic, like I'm kind of happy for ours to be like kind of hokey all-American songs about don't punch grandma. I would like us to do better. I would like us to make like incredible art that is life-affirming and also beautiful and elegant. But this seems like a good start, and it seems like people kind of like it. Like it does seem like a winning proposition to be like, hey, we like, hot guys and hot girls getting together and making hot families. Like this seems like a good proposal to me. So in that respect, I'm a little bit bullish, I guess. Okay, rant over. I wanted to mention one other piece, like little data point here on this score, which is that Luke Combs also covered Fast Car. This is like maybe a little bit more obscure, and I just want to touch on it in passing before we encourage you to read the damn site. The song Fast Car comes out in 1988. Tracy Chapman, classic single, makes a bajillion dollars, continues to do so. Luke Combs, country music star, white guy, covers it. Instantly, the capital D discourse kicks into high gear, and we are told that this is expropriation, that we are writing over the legacy of a Black, queer woman of color, which I actually did not know that Tracy Chapman apparently had a gay lover or something. But anyway, I mean, who cares? She's an alto, so we could have presumed. And in any case, like, it just seems, anyway, it just as another sort of point to the effect that this discourse is becoming increasingly bizarre and lame and drab. And as far as I can tell, Tracy Chapman is doing just fine, getting all sorts of royalties from Luke Combs' actually really good cover of Fast Car. I don't know if either of you guys have anything to say about that before we progress on, but we can just move on unless there's.
Well, I will say something. Gosh darn it.
Okay. Please do. Grab the
Yeah.
mic. Lean
So
in.
number one, like I don't really like hearing the words "small town." Just find it weird. Fast car is more euphonious, I think, and I think that it's so euphonious that even accompanied by a brief sort of melody that is a hook, it went a long way. It's a very catchy song and very easy to listen to, very easy to understand, sort of straight to the heart. Even if you're not totally dialed into the lyrics, it's still just, it's a vibe, it's a mood, it's giving all of the things. Which is to say, Tracy Chapman was the beneficiary of the merit of her work, and is not, in fact, some like benighted, marginalized, ignored figure who never got the credit she deserved. She had a great career. There was a huge breakthrough hit. It's just out and out absurd to even suggest or insinuate that the cover of her song by anyone would be some kind of like inappropriate capitalization on her skill and ability. She's not being upstaged. It's all nonsense. Nevertheless, one does have to wonder, there is a sort of like country music is at risk of becoming a gimmick. I'm just going to say it. I understand why. I'm sympathetic. All the songwriters went to Nashville because the LA music scene collapsed, and there are reasons for that touch on technology, but we're going to save that for another day. But it is true that you can go to Nashville and you can write some low effort songs that just kind of say some magic words about, like, and gosh darn it, like that's bad, and it becomes a hit. People are that desperate for somebody famous to say something that is not just in their own head. And so it's easy to salute musicians who are willing to take that step up to the plate and to say in prose at their concerts full of people that they want to reclaim or recover the country that seemed like it was going to exist for a long time, and then one day maybe not. So yes, I salute that. At the same time, like, people have to be careful. Like, art is it doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't grow in the lab. It isn't the product of rank opportunism. It isn't easy to do. It takes a certain amount of patience and humility and discipline, and trying to do an end run around those things to cash in or to make a political point, even a good political point, and even when the money's good. Like, at level 1, like, go off king, shoot your shot, whatever. At level 2, though, like, there are costs. There are costs to doing that.
I second all of that. I just think it's funny with this, the Tracy Chapman song and with the Jason Aldean song. It's like there's at this lower frequency of the expertism that we've all become like, subject to, especially since COVID. There's something so annoying about being lib-splained to about everything that happens. Like, how do they put it? Like, actually, maybe you don't know about sundown towns, or actually, there's a real long history of white musicians profiting off the success of Black music. I guess the classic locus for this is, Big Mama Thornton sang Hound Dog, and then Elvis stole it from her. But of course, it was written by 2 Jewish teenagers from Los Angeles. So, music, art, all of this, when it comes to race, has a lot of, there's just a lot of cross-pollination. But it's definitely annoying listening to, 20-something journalists giving their Wikipedia-derived 15-minute takes on everything. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, it's all chewed up out of that one book. I forget the name, but about how the rock and rollers all took it all from Black people, and weren't they mean? I'm going to plug your piece, Seth, about this, if I may. In City Journal, you have a great review of Elvis from a while back that talks about this, the Baz Luhrmann movie. So I'm actually going to let me plug two pieces en route to inviting you all to read the damn site. One is Seth's review of Elvis, which is punchy. It's pretty quick and talks about this supposed musical appropriation motif meme. And the other is in Claremont Review Books, which is our sister publication. And we always want to shout them out from time to time as we're talking about country music. And James's, I thought, extremely astute comments about the difference between like political grandstanding and making real art, which is something the left is bad about, but conservatives are bad about it too, it must be said. There's a great little essay in the latest issue, I believe it is, of Claremont Review Books at ClaremontReviewOfBooks.com, and it's called "The First Ladies of Country Music." It's by Scott Yenner, and it's on Patsy Cline, Tammy Wynette, Loretta Lynn, and Dolly Parton. Lots of excellent tracks in there. If you wanted to build a Spotify playlist out of it, you certainly could. And it's a kind of reflection on sexual politics and ethics as reflected in country music. Really fun read, ClaremontReviewBooks.com. However, that was a freebie because we are now all going to insist that you read the damn site. It's AmericanMinds.org. That's the site we're talking about. And every week we like to highlight a few pieces that have struck us each in the course of our editorial duties. So my piece this week is called "Beheading Leviathan." It's by Aaron Cariety. Aaron is really, if you don't know him, you may well already know him, but if you don't, he's really worth reading. He's the director of the Bioethics and American Democracy program at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a senior fellow at the Zephyr Institute. But as he details in this piece, he was also a casualty of the COVID censorship regime, somebody who deals in bioethics and challenged, he says in this piece, challenged the government's preferred pandemic policies like lockdown, school closures, universal masking, and vaccine mandates. I asked Aaron to write for us about this case, Missouri v. Biden, which is, issued an injunction against the president and his administration kind of interfering with what people can and can't say on social media. And Aaron was involved in this case. He joined in with a few others as part of this federal lawsuit. So he details kind of the history of what got him there, but also one of the things that is really great about his writing is he's sort of theoretically very informed at a high level, as well as having granular small bore details about politics. So you get here a really, I think, close and thorough account of the case and the need for it, but you also get a kind of grand sweep description of what Aaron calls the censorship leviathan, and the kind of way that it grew up out of the post 9/11 surveillance state. So very, I thought, kind of smart piece. Again, a quick read for all that it packs in. It's called "Beheading Leviathan." Aaron Cariety. Go take a look. Seth, what do you got?
I really liked the piece that Katya Sedgwick wrote for us this week. She's a writer from San Francisco, born and raised in the Soviet Union. Her piece is called "Barbie versus Oppenheimer," about the Barbieheimer, whatever the conflagration was. It's actually just looking at these two characters, from the golden age of American power, and sort of what it means to our culture now that there's this fascination with them. And she does make an interesting point about how originally Amy Schumer was supposed to play Barbie, not Margot Robbie, and sort of what the movie would have been like had that casting happened. So it's an interesting piece, Barbie v. Oppenheimer by Katya Sedgwick. Check it out.
Yep, that is a good one, and always fun to talk about anything that can invite Barbieheimer memes. That's one of my favorite current tropes on the internet. The best one that I've seen so far, and if anybody can send in to me any that top this, I will be very grateful. My favorite Barbieheimer meme is the Barbie font, the kind of pink curlicue font against that baby blue background. And it just says, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds." The feds got to James. They cut off his internet, so he is no longer with us to personally endorse a piece from the site. But I am receiving, via extrasensory perception, our editorial mind meld connection. I have received a note from him about which piece he wants to highlight, and that's DEI and the end of the constitutional order. It's by Chris Rufo. He of reportorial fame, well known for exposing all sorts of nefarious plots behind the scenes of the halls of power in states to do with CRT, to do with gender ideology. And he has written a book, which he gave us an excerpt from. The book is called America's Cultural Revolution, How the Radical Left Conquered Everything. We're also going to run a review of it in Claremont Review of Books, and we're going to do some responses to this excerpt at The American Mind. But this is similarly actually to the Variety piece in some ways. This is a granular, detailed, and political kind of fire-throwing piece, but it's also theoretical in a way that Claremont readers will appreciate, about how DEI kind of metastasized to take over and in many ways replace the original founding constitutional order of the US. So DEI and the End of the Constitutional Order by Chris Rufo. All of this and more at AmericanMind.org. That's it for us this week. Thank you all for listening. If you want to know more about our projects, we've already told you 2 places you can go, AmericanMind.org and ClaremontReviewBooks.com. You can also check out our DC-based Center for the American Way of Life at dc.claremont.org. And you can donate to help support our mission of recovering and defending the American idea. That's at claremont.org/donate. There is a little note section where you can add you can let us know that you appreciate the Roundtable if you like. You can also stay anonymous and just throw money at us, or you can hurl a brick through our window. What do we care? No, don't hurl a brick through our window. Do send us money at claremont.org/donate to support our projects. And thanks as always to our production and engineering crew, Jake Gannon, Blaze Ebner, and Logan Zeppieri. Finally, if you like this show, want to support us, want to help get the word out, it really makes a big difference when you leave a 5-star review wherever you're currently listening. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. You can give us 5 stars. At the very least, if you have criticisms, you can keep them to your dang self. And you can subscribe to get new episodes every week. Thanks to all of you for listening. We will talk to you next time.